today's video, we're going to show the final step in processing your own deer. Jay from Tarzia Meat Packing has been showing us, he gave us some tips in the first video on just how you want to handle the carcass, how you want to kill the deer, anything you can do to get better quality meat. In the second video, Jay shared with us the right way to skin a deer so that A, you have great tasting meat, but also you have a hide that you can use, maybe tan. In today's video, Jay's going to show us how to cut up your deer, not to be the quickest way to cut it up, not how to make a bunch of burger. He's going to show us how to cut beautiful steaks so that you can be proud of the food you're putting on your family's table and have the best tasting venison possible. Your lights are on. It's still on. I don't know if you want that right. That'll look funny.
Right. All right. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this flank here. Just on the inside. And then turn the animal sideways, and you'll have your kidney fat and tenderloins there, and you just want to go straight down. Like that. And I leave that to the side. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. But all I'm going to do on this side is just cut the flank here. I'm not going to cut that just yet, because that's going to be my hold. It's going to hold the deer from falling and hitting the floor. And then through the rib, just right through the rib to make yourself a little handle. Because what we're going to do is we're going to cut this deer in two pieces. You're going to have the front half, which I'm going to throw on the table now, and the hinds will be hanging up here. A lot of guys will go through, they'll remove all of this first, but what they don't realize is that you'll leave a lot of the loin in here because the shoulders are in the way. So we're going to take all this stuff off first. The last thing we'll do is remove the loins out, or back straps, which I don't like that word. These are loins, so that's what we're going to call them. All right, so now that that's done, and right here where the hip meets the loin, there's a line that just cut. I'm not going to use the tenderloins because by the time I get done with them, they're too small to do anything with them. I'll usually make stew meat out of those or something else, but they're really nothing special for me. Just make the cut straight across, just like that. Now the backbone is there, so we're going to cut through that. Now when you cut through this, go very easy, because if you go like a crazy man or a woman, you go too fast, you're going to end up cutting right through it. It's going to hit the floor, and there's going to be dirt everywhere. So just take it easy. Let the saw do the cutting. That's it. The saw did all the work. I didn't do anything. A lot of guys hammer through it and then end up with problems. Now, if you don't have a boning hook, I already put a handle in there for you, so we'll just use the handle right now through the ribs here. And then we're going to cut across a little bit here, and then we're going to take this with us. So we'll just go straight up. And that's it. I'm going to throw this guy on the table. Now, depending on where this animal, where you shoot the animal, I hit mine in the neck over here, so under here there's a lot of hemorrhaging that I want to take care of right away. Because first of all, I don't want to make a mess out of everything, and I don't need to be dragging the stuff around all over the table because I'm not going to eat it anyway. So we'll just take this right out of here. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Okay, see this here? No one's going to eat that. Don't waste your time fixing it and trying to salvage anything out of it. It's not going to happen. Just get rid of it. The first thing you do is get rid of it. Don't cut anything else. Get rid of all the damage first so it keeps everything clean. All right. Got a little bit more here I want to take care of. And that's pretty much going to be it for this stuff. So we want to get rid of all that. Just throw that in there. There might be a little bit left over on the other side that I can't see right now, but I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. So let me just wash my hands and get rid of this stuff. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove this leg bone. Remember, the first thing about boning any kind of meat is you want to follow the bone. And once you can get that down following the bone, you'll start to realize where they are, where the corners are, or the joints and everything are. It's really not that hard. Just take your time. And this is where the boning hook comes in, so that way you don't have to have your fingers anywhere near this. So here's the leg bone here. You can actually feel the bone. It's going through here. And just follow the bone. See, there's the bone right here. The next thing we're going to do is just follow the bone. That's all we're doing. Now, since these tendons down here are pretty nasty and they're very heavy, I don't want to put them in anything that I'm making, so I'm just going to cut around them so they stay on the bone that I'm going to throw in the garbage. And same thing over here. And just be very careful and take your time. And then we're going to go through this side. Use the hook if you have one. If not, just be very careful. Depending how much time you have to spend on cleaning up these bones, that's up to you. I can get mine relatively clean because I've been doing this a long time, so it takes a little bit of time. Just be patient. Now when you get up to here, this is where the shoulder and the leg bone meet. There's a joint right here. It takes a little bit of work to get in there, but we're just going to go around. That's where your socket is. Pull that out. Let the knife do all the cutting, don't force anything, and you just go around the bones, just feel it, and it'll start to go through, and then just take your time, and you'll come out with a pretty good clean bone like that. I'm going to throw this away. Go for it. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the shoulder blade, but first, if you have, like here, they're usually, same thing on the cattle, there's a pretty good chunk of fat right here. Let's just get rid of that right away. We don't need it. And it's going to save us some time later. Just throw that in the garbage. Now, on the blade, there's the center of the shoulder blade is right here. You can feel it. You're going to go on either side. First, we're going to take the side closest to you off. So take your hook and stick your knife in there and just follow that ridge all the way down. That's it. And then just pull it towards you. And that stuff is going to peel right off the bone. Okay. Everything has a seam where we're cutting. And you want to make sure you pull this out. This will make a nice piece of stew. You can clean that up, make some stew meat out of it. We're not big fans of stew, so we're going to throw that, the ground venison. We'll just put that over here because that doesn't need much cleaning. Now in here, in this big fat pocket, you have a big gland inside of here. So just take this here, don't ever throw this into your food, into your ground, because you're going to have that in there. And that you don't want. That's going to taste real nasty. So take that whole thing of fat here, even with the meat on it. This meat is not too bad right here. It's pretty thick, so it's easy to take off. But throw that whole thing right in the garbage. Because there's little glands in there also besides that big one. Now after that part's taken out, we're going to go to this side of the shoulder blade and just run your knife down it all the way to the end. I don't know if you can see this, Austin. This is called the shoulder clod right here. We're going to take our knife, the brisket here, and just cut around. You don't have to go deep, just make a cut. Like that. So then what we're going to do is after that cut is made, you're just going to pull the meat back a little bit with your hook, if you have one. And then the front of this is where the shoulder blade is. Loosen that up a little bit. This is going to be hard to do if you've never done this before, but I've done this plenty of times, so it looks easy. And then you run the knife along that shoulder blade. And now, with your hook, you should be able to pull that right off without any effort. There. Okay, that's called the shoulder clod. There's not much we're gonna do with that, mainly stew. If you want any stew or just grind. Then you should be able to pick up that shoulder blade now. And just run your knife, be careful, you don't slip. And just go tight against it with the tip of the blade. And take the cartilage part with you on the end of the blade. And just pull and let the knife do the cutting, don't force anything. And that's it, that's your shoulder blade. Clean a little bit of that out of there if you want. That's it for that, and we'll throw that away. Alright, the next thing that I do, so a lot of guys do this hanging up. I'm going to do it laying down, it's just a little easier. Now that the shoulder is gone, you take this piece out here, this part of the chunk we can get rid of. Deer fat is kind of nasty. I don't like it myself, so I try to get as much of that stuff off as possible. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is where the spine is. I'm going to go on one side and be very careful when you're doing this. A lot of guys will do it up in the air, but I got to do it on the table so I can get down farther. Okay, it's that side, and then take your knife and go on the other side of that spine and do the same thing. And angle your knife towards the bone, that way you can get most of the meat off and you're not taking forever or using a lot of spare time to take off meat here and there. Try to get most of it off in one shot. Next thing you do is right here, you make a line with your knife. Right where you cut down through the flank, you go parallel with this. That's it. And now we're going to take the loin out. You start from this end here. See, lost? So you take your hook or your fingers, or be very careful, and you're just going to follow the ribs. And like I said, let the knife do the cutting. Don't force anything. Okay? And just keep following the ribs. Like I said, a lot of guys, well, that's a lot easier hanging upside, hanging up on the hook there and doing it. That's fine. You can do that too, but I prefer to do it like this. Because if you do this, and you take this loin out while it's on a hook there, and if you happen to hit the joint just right with your knife, the rest of it will fall on the floor. At least when it's on the table like this, you don't have to worry about that. And I go all the way down to the neck. And then, usually where the neck curves or attaches there, just cut it off. We'll throw that over there for right now. I'll get back to that stuff later. Okay, this side's done. There's a bunch of meat here on the ribs. I'll take the heavy stuff off. Like I said, try to leave as much fat off that meat as possible. If you don't like that taste, which I don't, some other people don't mind it, and then you just throw it right in there. Good. This is pretty much done here, so I'm not going to mess around with this anymore. Pull this off here. You can use this. It's fine. There's really not a lot here either to use. This flank here you can take right off. Now, I'm not going to do anything else with these ribs. Sometimes we have people that want them for their game dinners, or they want to put them on their smoke or whatever. I'm not going to mess around with it, so that's good enough for me. I'll use this for coyote bait. Go up and do that. Here it is again. I'll take and clean up this damage over here first before I go too much farther. I don't want to make a mess everywhere. And just throw that away. Get yourself an apron too. It's nice to wipe your hands on. We're going to do the same process again on this side.
This second half is exactly the same as the first half, what you just saw. So Jay just went through it, did the same thing on the other side of the deer. Then he gets to deboning the hindquarters. Let's get into that.
All right, so what I'm going to do here now, I'm just going to take out the half of the fillets. Leave that fat on them, it protects them for the most part. Still a little discolored, but that's what's going to happen with age. Let's take this guy over here. Okay. Now everything's in the rough right now. I'll fine tune this in a few minutes so I know what it looks like. I'm all done with this. I'm just going to toss it now. I'll bring us up to the farm later. We'll use it for coyotes. And then hopefully we'll do a video on that one day. All right, so that completes the front half of the animal. What we're going to do, we took the shoulders out, got the loins are out, and whatever trim we're going to use, or stew meat. Next we're going to tackle the hindquarters. You do not need a saw for this, period. All you need is just some patience. Take off this fat while it's still together like this, so that way it's easier to work on and you're not chasing it all over the table. She got some nice fat. She's pretty good up there, but she should have been. There's no deer anymore. There's plenty to go around. This is probably the worst season I've ever had. This year.
Really?
And there's a bunch of outdoor things on Facebook through Connecticut, Connecticut bow hunters.
A lot of guys
stuff like that,
yeah.
and I've seen it. I don't know how many times everybody's saying the same thing. What an awful year. And then some guys on the other hand are just the opposite. They've had a really good year, but so usually I'm tagged out by day one in the morning. It's very hard. Okay. You want to take this stuff off because you don't need it. It tastes kind of nasty and it's very hard to work on. This fat gets really hard. Okay. All right, now we got most of that off. So the next thing you're going to do is after you get rid of that fat, if it has any fat on it at all, spread the legs as far as you can, okay? And just follow this hip bone. Just follow the bone. Just take little strokes with your knife. You don't have to go crazy because you're trying to follow the bone, especially if you don't know the anatomy. Just take your time. Once you get around this, you're going to go down the rest of the loin here. Just follow the bone. If your knife is good, it'll be able to go right through this stuff and you can just peel right off the bone. It's that side, and you repeat the same thing on the other side. Just follow the hip bone. Go nice and easy. See, my knife is just going through this stuff like nothing, so I don't have to put any effort into it. Okay? And you also, when you use your knife not just to cut, but to pull the meat away at the same time. I'm using this for two different things. To cut it and pull it away so I can see what I'm doing. That way I don't have to put my hand in there. Just follow Okay, now this is what it's gonna look like that. So a lot of guys bone this from the other way. We're gonna
Yeah.
bone this pretty much backwards.
Let me see. That's
That's
perfect.
where the tail would be. It's the bone hole. Okay. Start from here. You go around this little, I guess, I don't know what this is called here, and then just go straight down the back and off this side. When we get to that point, we're gonna flip this whole thing right over, just like that. So now we're looking at this end. Take off this fat here because we don't need it. This is why I leave the fat on, because it protects this meat. And you want to take that fat out of there because there's a lot of heavy glands inside this kidney fat. And big arteries in here too we want to get rid of. Here, if you manage to leave the flank on and everything as you're skinning inside this fat here, you want to get rid of all this because there's a big gland in there also. Just take that right off, and there's a seam there, and just pretty goes nice and easy. Just pull as you cut. Here's her milk bag. We'll just clean that off there. Now this is what I want to show you before I go any farther. And if you see any black stuff on here, keep that in mind. All right, so before we go any further with this, I'm just going to trim a little bit of this stuff off from the singeing. It's a little discolored, but it's not going to hurt you, and it's not dirt. All right. Now this is what the hindquarters should look like after you skin it. See how nice and clean that is? There's no discoloration, no browning, no drying, no dirt, no leaves. It's all usable meat. So that's why I always tell people, do not split the crotch when you field dressing. Just leave it alone. Okay. So now what we're going to do here is the hip bone's right here again. Just follow the bone. You hear that popping? That's the socket right there. Just follow this all the way down. Follow the bone. And when you get here, do not cut this all the way through yet. Just let it hang there. It's still attached. If you take this off, this will pop up. So use this as a counterweight to hold this side from, so that way you can work on it. And then do the same thing.
It's like filleting a fish, right?
Yep, exactly.
Keep the one side on.
Yep. And then you hit that joint right there. Now you can go in on this side. The hindquarter is now free. And same thing here. Now you can go through if you want and pick all this little bit of meat out. Just be careful because there's not much in there. You think there's a lot, but there's not. And you don't cut yourself. And if you split these in half first, it'll be a little easier to pull those little chunks of meat up. But other than that, that's pretty much it. You're not going to salvage much more off there, so we'll give it to the coyotes. All right. Now that we have our hinds with the hip bone removed, what I want to do now is I want to take the leg bone out. I'm going to take this all out in one piece. This is very easy. First thing we're going to do is here on the inside. So when you separate all this and this, and now there's a gland, and a couple glands in here you want to take out. So just, even if you take a little bit of meat with it, it's okay. Just take this fat out of here because there's some glands in there you want to get rid of. May not look like much, but they're right there. Okay, next thing we're going to do is, this is the remainder of the fillet, which I'm not a big fan of personally, so I don't care if they go in a hamburger. A lot of guys will keep them for themselves, but me, I'm not interested in that. And I'll clean up all of this stuff here. What I do next is just, I want to loosen up this hip bone here. So just take the tip of the knife and just follow the bone. That's all you got to do. Nice and easy. Is just loosen this up. Okay. Then I turn it over now. Now, I'm going to bone this whole entire thing. First thing I'm gonna do is just like on the front legs, is I'm gonna cut this right here because I don't want these heavy tendons anywhere near the ground meat. So we'll just pull them off and leave them there. So now it's they're pretty much gone. Now here, everything is on a seam. Seams are everywhere. This has a seam, this has a seam, this has seams. You have to follow the seams if you want this to come out the way that it would come out in the grocery store and all the separate cuts, which is very easy to follow. Once you find the seam, and it's all along the bone, okay? Just right against the bone. There it is. And just wiggle the knife around there. Like I said, if you don't know the anatomy of it, just take your time, you'll figure it out. It's not hard. So all you're doing is following the bone with the seam. Now this here, this is the sirloin tip I'm pulling off right now. There's the kneecap is right here. You can take it off with this, or you can leave it on the bone. I'll take it off just to show you how to get rid of it later. And then pull up on this and cut at the same time, just following the joints. The most important part of all this right now is the tip of your knife. That's all you're going to be using for all of this. That's the leg bone. So we don't need that anymore, and we're going to toss it. Okay, now on some of these animals, there might be, because she's a little older, there might be a bone here that a lot of people don't realize it's there. Let's see if she's got one. I feel something here. There's a bone in there. Hey, my knife won't cut through it.
Probably a grinder killer there, right?
No, the grinder will eat it right up, but it'll kill your teeth. You know that hard crunchy thing you bite into on a burger? Well, that could be most likely this thing. Now see this? That's a bone. And it's inside the shank here that we just took out. So on younger animals, you're probably not going to have this, but once they get 2-3 years old, that'll turn into a bone there. So just take that out and throw it away. Now this shank here is bone free. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take this apart piece by piece and show it to you instead of stacking it up over there, because this is pretty much the end game. All these tendons like this, cut them off. Don't try to chew on them or put them in your grind. They're tough and they're not good on the process. If you try to grind, just get it around your grinder knives, and the next thing you know, it starts coming out like mush because they're all clogged up. And you got to take it all apart. If you are having problems grinding, put the meat in the freezer for a little while, because if it gets too warm, it'll turn into mush. Okay. All this stuff here we want to get rid of. I'm not going to go crazy with it, but just the heavy stuff I don't want to take off. So that's that. Throw this away. Or if you have dogs, you can feed that to your dogs. There's nothing wrong with it if you want to do that. Next thing
that's what we do.
You give it to the dogs?
Yeah.
All right, so the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to take out the sirloin tip. Now, keep in mind, this is all on seams again. Let me take this kneecap off. Just cut around it. There's your kneecap. Don't leave that on there because that will break your grinder if you have a small one. That'll do a lot of damage. Deer bones are very brittle, but on top of that, they're very hard. So right here, and you can play around with this. You're not going to get it on the first shot. And if you do, just keep that in mind. You got lucky. Just follow the seam. See, all this stuff is on a seam. And then you get to a point where you can pull all this. Just look at that. This comes right off. All on seams. This is exactly the way we do cattle. This is exactly the way we do pigs if we're boning out their hams for stuff. So here's your sirloin tip. Now there's a lot of garbage in here too you got to get rid of. Like this mess here. I don't want any of that in my stuff. And then the next thing you're gonna do is right here, just pull and cut. This is your top butt sirloin. Okay. And then this here is the cap of the sirloin tip. Take that nasty stuff off. There's that. Let's go in for trim. Get rid of this fat here. And we'll get rid of this tendon here. Now what we're going to take off next is the top round, or the inside round. This is all on seams also. You just have to find them. There it is. And just cut. Just like that. There's your top round. Next here is your eye round. There's your eye round there. Now this is called the heel. This piece here. You want to take this out by the seam because in there is another gland that you want to get rid of. Take this all out of here. See? Okay. And those glands, those big ones are everywhere, and pretty much I showed you where they are. There's a lot of small ones that you really can't see, especially on a deer. They're not going to hurt you, but it's just a peace of mind knowing that you're not chewing on one of those big ones. That's why we take them all out. Okay, there's your bottom round, or your bottom round flat, they would call it. And this here is the rump end, the pointing end, and this would be the bottom round. So if we cut that in half, we'll have a rump roast and then a bottom round roast. If you've done this correctly, right here you're going to have your top round, you're going to have your sirloin tip, you're going to have your top butt sirloin without the cap on it. This is the eye round. This is the bottom round flat, and this end is the rump. It's all one piece. So if you go to the grocery store and you have a rump roast and a bottom round, they're the same piece. It's just one has a pointy end, the other one has a square end. It's the same piece of meat. So whatever's on sale, buy the one of those instead of buying a rump roast. There's absolutely no difference. And then this is just the part of the shank. We already took that bone out of there, so be careful. There is sometimes a bone in these animals, in that shank. If you have a hard time finding it, or if you don't know if there's one, you just cut across it. If your knife goes through effortlessly, there's no bone. So we've gotten rid of that. All right. I've already boned one hind quarter. I'm going to leave this other one till later, and we'll just get right to the trimming and making some steaks.
Jay has finished deboning the hindquarters. In the next video in this series, you're going to see how he trims all of this meat and how he cuts it up into steaks. So stay tuned for that video. And if you're interested in any of the equipment Jay is using in these videos, you can find links below to all the gear he uses. If you're going to buy them, consider shopping through our links or this Amazon button right here. It helps support the channel and helps us make these videos for you.